It started as an ordinary school day for 15-year-old Jamal Carter, a bright, ambitious student with a passion for science and dreams of becoming an astronaut. But what unfolded in his classroom that day would change the course of his life and spark a conversation far beyond the school's walls. During a routine discussion, Jamal raised his hand to share an idea. His teacher, Mr. Thomas, smirked and said, "Oh, I didn't know astronauts could look like you." The class fell silent, and Jamal froze. The weight of that moment hung heavy, not just because of the words, but because of the laughter that followed. What Mr. Thomas may have intended as a misguided joke struck a deep chord. Jamal felt humiliated and singled out, not for his intellect or his contribution, but for his skin color. For Jamal's parents, Marcus and Lydia Carter, the news was both heartbreaking and infuriating. As soon as Jamal recounted the story that evening, they knew they couldn't let this go unaddressed. This wasn't just about one comment in one classroom. For the Carters, it represented something much larger, a pattern of microaggressions, systemic bias, and the challenges Black students face in educational spaces where they are often undervalued or misunderstood. They had heard stories like this before, but this time, it was personal. Statistics reveal that Black students are disproportionately subjected to biases in classrooms, from disciplinary actions to lower expectations. Incidents like these contribute to a larger cycle of marginalization, where students lose confidence in themselves and their potential. But Marcus and Lydia weren't going to let that happen to Jamal. They were determined to turn this moment of pain into a catalyst for change, not just for their son, but for countless others who might be suffering in silence. What followed was an inspiring and relentless journey of advocacy, accountability, and transformation. The Carters didn't just confront Mr. Thomas, they confronted an entire system. They took their story public, using the power of social media and their voices to demand justice, not revenge, but a change in how schools handle racism and bias. Little did they know, their response would go viral, touching millions of hearts and sparking widespread conversations about equity and inclusion. It became a movement, led by a family determined to ensure that no student would feel less than because of who they are. The morning after Jamal told his parents about the incident, Marcus and Lydia sat at the kitchen table, their coffee untouched. Their emotions swung between anger, disbelief, and sadness. How could someone trusted to educate our child humiliate him like that? Lydia said, her voice shaking. Marcus, usually the calm and composed one, responded firmly, "We're not letting this slide. Jamal deserves better, and so do all the other kids who've gone through this." Later that day, Marcus and Lydia requested an urgent meeting with the school's principal, Ms. Rivera. Sitting across the table from her in a sparsely decorated office, they recounted the incident. "This isn't just about Jamal," Marcus said. "It's about a culture in this school that allows comments like this to go unchecked." Ms. Rivera listened, occasionally jotting down notes. "I understand your concerns," she said. "We'll investigate and speak with Mr. Thomas." It's possible this was a misunderstanding, but her measured tone and choice of words felt dismissive. "A misunderstanding?" Lydia interrupted. "My son was humiliated in front of his peers because of his race. That's not something you misunderstand. That's something you address immediately." Ms. Rivera assured them that the school would look into it, but the Carters left the meeting feeling unsatisfied. At home, Jamal remained quiet. He avoided talking about school and grew hesitant to participate in class, fearing further ridicule. "I don't get it," he said one evening. "Why do people always assume what I can't do before they see what I can?" His parents knew that this incident was not just about a single comment. It was about the cumulative weight of being doubted, dismissed, and diminished. Jamal's struggles mirrored the experiences of many Black students. Research has shown that teachers often hold unconscious biases, leading to lower expectations for minority students. These biases manifest in subtle ways, from how students are disciplined to the opportunities they are offered. The Carters began digging deeper. They spoke with other parents, and stories of similar incidents started to emerge. Comments about hair, dismissive attitudes toward academic ambitions, and disciplinary actions that disproportionately affected Black students. In one conversation, a mother shared how her daughter, a star athlete, had been discouraged by a coach from pursuing a leadership role on the team because it might be too much responsibility. Another parent recounted how their son had been labeled trouble simply for questioning a grading decision. These stories painted a troubling picture of a system riddled with implicit bias. It wasn't just about one teacher or one school. It was about an educational structure that often failed to see the potential in students like Jamal. Frustrated by the school's slow response, Lydia decided to share their story on social media. In a heartfelt post, she described what had happened to Jamal, the impact it had on him, and their struggle to hold the school accountable. She ended the post with a powerful question. How many more students like Jamal have to feel this way before we say enough is enough? The post quickly gained traction. Within hours, comments flooded in, some from parents sharing similar stories, others offering support and outrage. Local activists reached out, offering guidance on how to escalate the issue. The Carter story was no longer just a private matter. It had become a public reckoning. News outlets picked up the story, and soon, the school found itself at the center of a growing controversy. As the story gained momentum, the Carters found themselves at the forefront of an unexpected movement. News channels, local community leaders, and activists reached out, amplifying their voices and turning what had been a personal grievance into a public conversation about race, education, and accountability. 1 week after Lydia's social media post went viral, the family stood in front of a small crowd gathered at a community center. Activists and parents who had faced similar challenges joined them, holding signs that read, "Accountability in Education" and "Stop Racism in Schools." Marcus took the microphone. "This isn't just about my son," he began, his voice steady but passionate. "This is about every child who has ever been told they can't, every student who has been made to feel like they don't belong. This stops now." The Carter story resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. News outlets interviewed the family, and hashtags like #JusticeForJamal began trending. But with increased visibility came criticism. Some questioned whether the teacher's comment had been misunderstood. Others accused the Carters of overreacting or seeking attention. Determined to shift the focus back to the core issue, Lydia and Marcus partnered with local advocacy groups to collect data on racial disparities in their school district. The findings were stark. Black students made up only 15% of the student body but accounted for over 40% of disciplinary actions. Teachers were less likely to recommend Black students for advanced placement courses, even when their grades met or exceeded the requirements. Surveys revealed that Black students frequently felt excluded or overlooked in classroom discussions. These statistics painted a grim picture, one that was impossible for the school district to ignore. The Carters presented their findings to the school board at a public meeting, where dozens of supporters showed up to demand change. Jamal, nervous but resolute, spoke directly to the board. "I want to learn in a place where I'm judged by what I can do, not by what I look like," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I deserve that. We all do." As the investigation into Mr. Thomas unfolded, more students began coming forward with their own experiences. One former student shared how Mr. Thomas had dismissed her questions in class, telling her she should focus on passing instead of aiming for top grades. Another described how he once referred to her natural hairstyle as distracting. The teacher, when questioned, insisted that his remarks were taken out of context. "I never intended to offend anyone," he said in a written statement. "If my words caused harm, I am deeply sorry." But his apology felt hollow to the Carters and many others. The school district announced mandatory bias training for all staff, but activists and parents demanded more, including a public apology, a review of the district's policies, and disciplinary action against Mr. Thomas. The turning point came when a leaked email revealed that the school administration had initially dismissed the incident as minor and only took action after the story went public. This revelation fueled outrage, reinforcing the Carters' claim that systemic issues within the school were being ignored. Local news stations aired segments on the growing movement, featuring interviews with parents, students, and experts on education reform. One education consultant noted, "What we're seeing here isn't an isolated incident. It's a reflection of what happens when systems fail to address bias at its roots." The momentum was undeniable. Public pressure mounted, and the district faced an ultimatum: address the systemic issues or risk losing the trust of the community. The growing pressure on the school district forced swift and significant action. The Carters' unwavering resolve, combined with the public outcry, left the administration with no choice but to take meaningful steps toward accountability and reform. The school board convened a special meeting, broadcast live to address the situation. In a rare public appearance, Superintendent Elaine Morris stood before a packed room. On behalf of the district, I want to sincerely apologize to Jamal Carter, his family, and all students who have felt unheard or disrespected in our schools, she began. This incident has exposed critical gaps in how we handle issues of bias, and we are committed to making significant changes. The district announced a series of immediate actions. Mr. Thomas was placed on administrative leave, pending a full investigation. All staff were required to attend comprehensive cultural competency and bias training. An independent task force was established to evaluate and revise the district's policies on equity and inclusion. The district pledged to create safe spaces where students could report concerns without fear of dismissal or retaliation. The Carters appreciated the gestures, but were quick to point out that apologies and promises weren't enough. "These steps are a start," Marcus said during a news interview, "but real change comes from consistent effort, not temporary fixes." Amid the chaos, Jamal began to find his voice. Inspired by the support he received from friends, family, and strangers across the country, he decided to take a leadership role in the newly formed Student Advisory Committee. "I want to make sure no one else feels the way I did that day," Jamal said during the committee's first meeting. He proposed initiatives like peer-led discussions on diversity and monthly Culture Day to celebrate the school's varied backgrounds. For Jamal, this wasn't just about advocacy. It was about reclaiming his confidence. He began to thrive academically and emotionally, channeling his energy into a science project on diversity in space exploration, a topic close to his heart. His work caught the attention of a local STEM organization, which invited him to present at a regional conference. The Carter's story galvanized the community. Parents, educators, and students formed advocacy groups, demanding continued transparency from the school district. One group, Voices for Change, organized workshops for parents on recognizing and addressing bias in schools. Local businesses and organizations joined the effort, funding scholarships and mentoring programs for underrepresented students. A local bookstore hosted a series of lectures on race and education, featuring prominent speakers who emphasized the importance of creating equitable learning environments. The movement also inspired educators. Teachers from neighboring districts reached out to the Carters, sharing their commitment to fostering inclusive classrooms. One teacher wrote in an email, "Your story reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place. To uplift every student, no matter their background." The changes didn't stop at Jamal's school. The district's task force issued a report outlining systemic reforms, including revising curriculum to include more diverse perspectives and authors, implementing anonymous reporting systems for students and staff to address incidents of bias, partnering with community organizations to provide ongoing diversity training. The Carters' advocacy also inspired state-level discussions on education policy, with legislators proposing bills to mandate anti-bias training across all public schools. Through it all, the Carters remained grounded. "This isn't about fame or attention," Lydia said in a televised interview. "It's about standing up for what's right and ensuring every child feels valued and respected." The family's journey had transformed them as well. Jamal's younger sister, Maya, began speaking out in her own classroom when she saw unfair treatment. Marcus, who had once hesitated to speak publicly, became a sought-after advocate for educational equity. As for Lydia, she found her calling in activism, joining a national organization focused on dismantling systemic racism in education. Months after the incident, life for the Carters had settled into a new rhythm. But the impact of their journey, both personal and societal, continued to unfold. Jamal, once hesitant to speak up, had grown into a confident young leader. His science project on diversity in space exploration earned him accolades at the regional STEM conference, and he received a mentorship offer from a NASA engineer. The experience not only reignited his passion for science, but also gave him a platform to inspire others. In a school assembly organized by the Student Advisory Committee, Jamal spoke to his peers. "It's okay to dream big," he told them. "And it's okay to demand better from the people and systems that are supposed to support you. Your voice matters." Jamal's transformation was a testament to resilience and the power of advocacy, and his classmates began to see him not just as a peer but as a role model. The reforms implemented by the school district began to show tangible results. Teachers reported a noticeable shift in classroom dynamics, with more inclusive discussions and greater student engagement. The newly established Equity Task Force conducted quarterly evaluations to ensure accountability. Students who had once felt overlooked started to feel seen and valued. Jamal's school became a model for other districts grappling with similar issues, with educators visiting to learn from the changes made. Mr. Thomas, after undergoing extensive bias training, issued a heartfelt public apology. Though his future at the school remained uncertain, his statement acknowledged the harm his words had caused and expressed a commitment to personal growth. The movement sparked by the Carters extended beyond the school's walls. Community organizations continued to collaborate on projects aimed at promoting equity in education. One such initiative, a mentorship program for underrepresented students, paired professionals from various fields with high schoolers to provide guidance and inspiration. The ripple effects were felt statewide. Inspired by the Carters' advocacy, legislators passed the Equity in Education Act, mandating anti-bias training for all public school staff and encouraging districts to adopt inclusive curricula. The Carters were invited to testify at the state capitol, where Lydia shared their story and urged lawmakers to see education as a tool for empowerment, not exclusion. For Marcus and Lydia, the journey had been both exhausting and rewarding. Sitting together on their porch one evening, Marcus said, "We didn't set out to change the world. We just wanted Jamal to have what every kid deserves: respect, opportunity, and hope." Lydia nodded, adding, "But if our fight helps even one more child feel like they belong, it was worth it." Jamal, too, reflected on how far they had come. In a journal entry for his English class, he wrote, "That day in the classroom changed everything. At first, I felt small and powerless. But now, I see that one voice can spark a conversation, and one family can start a movement. The journey isn't over, but I'm proud of how far we've come, and I'm ready to keep going." The story of the Carters serves as a reminder of the power of advocacy, community, and resilience. It's a testament to what can happen when individuals refuse to stay silent in the face of injustice. As the family's story continued to inspire others, Marcus and Lydia often ended their speeches with the same message: change doesn't happen overnight, but it begins with each of us. Speak up, stand together, and never stop believing in the power of your voice. The journey was far from easy, but the Carters' determination turned a moment of pain into a movement for progress. Their story remains a beacon of hope, proving that even the smallest voices can ignite lasting change.